Hello, my name is Emma, and in today's video, I am going to teach you some very important conversational English. I'm going to teach you some expressions we use a lot, and all of these expressions have one thing in common. They all use the word go. So go is one of the first words you probably will learn in English. We use it when we talk about going to a different place. So for example, I go to school, or I go to the park. So we have go, and it has that meaning, but it also can have a lot of other meanings in English. And those are the ones we're going to look at today. So again, we use it a lot in conversation. So let's get started with some of the most basic ways we use go in conversation. So I have here the question. One of the first questions you ask a person when you meet them or when you see them, and that is, how are you? We often use go in a way that means the same thing as this. So we often say, how's it going? How's it going means the same thing as how are you? Notice that there is an apostrophe and an S. This actually is how is it going, but we like to use a contraction in conversation. It's a little bit more informal, so we would probably use this with maybe our friends or our family. Or, somebody we meet, but maybe not in a job interview. Okay, so we use this a lot. How's it going? If you are in Australia, you might see, how you going? We would not say this in North America. I don't think we say this in England. But in Australia, you will often hear people say, how you going? And that means the same thing as, how are you? Okay. I was very confused when I went to Australia. I thought that, people were making grammar mistakes, but it turns out that this is actually a very common way in Australia to say, how are you? Another thing we can use with go is if we want to find out how something specific, how is something? So for example, maybe your friend has just started taking some new classes. You might say to them, how are your classes going? Or how is your job going? How, if you're talking about the past, how did the interview go? So we often use how with, some event or situation, and going to ask how did it, how it was, okay? And you'll see this a lot. Okay, so these are some of the ways we use go when we're talking about how someone is. And we're going to, we will come back to this one, but let's talk about some of the responses first. When somebody says, how are you? You often respond with, I'm fine. So it's the same thing with when somebody asks you, how's it going? You can say, I'm fine, but you can also use go in your response. So you can say, how's it going? It's going well, or it's going good. I know that's not, great grammar, but we do use good a lot when people ask us how we're doing. Like in conversational English, not in written English. But yeah, it's going well, it's going good, it's going amazing, it's going terrible. Okay, so you can use different adjectives here to describe how you're feeling or how your day is going. You can also just talk generally. You can say it's, or you can also say everything, or things. There are many variations of this. You might say, how's it going? Everything's going amazing. Or things are great. Things are going good. Okay, so there's a lot of variation. If somebody asks you, how are your classes going? Or how is work going? Your answer could also be, my classes are going great. Work is going great. School is going amazing. Or maybe, school's going terrible. Okay, so you can use this in a lot of different ways. We also have this question, which people sometimes ask when, they see you and, maybe it's your friend and they're meeting you. They might say, hey, what's going on? Okay, so what's going on? This one you got to be careful with because what's going on can have multiple meanings, and it all depends on the way you say it. So when you say what's going on, it's very similar to how are you. You just also have to be careful about your tone. So for example, what's going on is different than what's going on. Okay, so you see how I changed my voice? So if you say this in a very friendly, what's going on way, then it means pretty much, how are you doing? Or how are you? And the response to this might be something like, oh, what's going on? Nothing much. Not much is happening. I've just started classes. They're going good. So you might answer in this way. There are many different ways to answer, but nothing much means, yeah, my life is pretty much the same. So these are all common at the very beginning of conversation, okay? And again, be careful with formality. How's it going? How you going? What's going on? These are informal. So you use them with your friends, you use them with people your age, but you might not use them in maybe a business meeting or maybe a very serious situation. All right, so now let's look at some other expressions where we use the word go. Okay, so we talked a little bit about, hey, what's going on in terms of go expressions. Now I'm going to teach you another meaning of what's going on. What's going on or what's going on here can also mean that maybe you're confused about something or you're actually asking what's happening. Okay, so what's going on can also mean what's happening. So imagine if you saw a car accident, you might go up to somebody and say, what's going on here? What's happening? Okay, so they have the same meaning. Also like another way we use what's going on here is with parents and kids. I remember when I was a kid, anytime I was doing something bad, my mom wouldn't know what I was doing, but she would somehow know I was doing something bad. So she didn't know what it was, but she knew maybe I had a guilty look on my face. She always knew. So she would always say to me, what's going on here? Meaning, what are you doing? I know you're doing something bad. What's going on here? And so that's why using your tone is very important for this. Because hey, what's going on is different than what's going on. Okay, so be very careful about the tone you're using because it's not the words that change the meaning, it's the way you say it that changes the meaning for what's going on. Okay, we also have, something is going on, or, this is similar to this, but something is going on here. I'm not using it as a question. I put a lot of question marks to show something is going on means you're confused. You know something is happening, but you don't know what is happening. So sometimes, for example, maybe you have two friends and, they're your friends and suddenly they're starting to act a bit funny around each other. And you're thinking, these guys are acting kind of strange, but I don't know why. Okay, maybe they're secretly in love. Maybe they've been dating for the past 5 months and, you just had no idea. So when you see something and you know that something is happening, but you don't know what exactly is happening, you can say, something is going on. I don't know what's going on, but something is going on. And I'm blocking these because it's not a question, it's a statement. But it's pretty much, in your mind, you're thinking, what's happening? Something is going on. I wonder what it is. Okay, we can also use go when we're talking about change. Things changing, things becoming different. And a lot of the times we use go when we're talking about what some people would say are bad changes, okay? So for example, go crazy. Okay, so like, somebody is going crazy right now. Their girlfriend just broke up with them. They're really upset. They're going crazy. Okay, so there's a change there. There's a change in their behavior. And some people would say it's a negative change. Or, going mad. We can also say, that guy's going mad, meaning crazy, not angry. In this case, these two have the same meaning. Or, I personally like gray hair, but some people, when their hair changes to gray, some people see it as a bad thing. I don't see it as a bad thing, but some people get upset about it. And so for those people who think, gray hair is a bad thing, when their hair changes from brown to gray, maybe they say, oh, his hair went gray, or his hair is going gray. So we use go with the color. And again, gray means your hair color. Or, I like people who are bald, but some people might see like losing your hair as like a negative thing. I don't. My brother is actually bald, but some people would see it as a negative thing. And so they would say, go bald. My brother went bald. So it's a change from having hair to having no hair. And again, I'm going to say it again. I don't think it's bad necessarily. Some people might say it's bad, but it's all opinion based. Now this is different from, we have other changes that happen. We have old, tired, ill. These are also things people see as negative changes, but we don't use go with these things. We actually use the word get. So you get old, you get tired, you get ill. So it really is, sometimes we use go, sometimes we use get. When we're talking about negative changes, you just need to learn the word and figure out, is it with go or is it with get? But again, this is another way we use go. So now let's look at some other examples of go. Okay, so another way that we use go, so as you can see, there are many different ways we use go instead of just go to the park. We use it in many different expressions. Another expression is there you go or here you go. Now this is one we use a lot in conversation. Okay, so we don't really use it in writing, but in conversation you will hear it a lot. And so what does it mean? Well, usually we use there you go or here you go when we're giving something to somebody. It's what we say as we give something to somebody. So imagine I have this marker. I want to give you the marker. I will say, there you go, or here you go. A lot of students get very worried about the difference between there and here. For these expressions, usually it means pretty much the same thing. So don't worry about it. If you say, here we go, or there you go, it sounds the same to native speakers of English. So don't worry so much about if you use there or here, okay? You can use both. So my example is, can I use your pen? There you go, or here you go. And so this also means, yes, you can. If somebody is asking you for something, can I borrow, or can I have a piece of paper? Yes, there you go. It means you're giving them permission and you're also handing them something. You can also say it if you do something for somebody. So for example, maybe somebody wants you to give them a whole new hairstyle. So you work on their hairstyle, you make their hair look really nice, and you might say, oh, there you go. Okay, meaning, I've just done this for you. So we use this a lot in speech. Main one, though, is when you're giving something to somebody, you say, there you go. Okay, we can also use there we go again, or there you go again. You can change the subject here depending on the situation. You can use this when you want to show you are kind of annoyed, or, this is an annoyed face. It's not a happy face. It's more of a angry face. So when you want to show you are frustrated about something. So for example, I'll give you a good example of this. Imagine you have a friend who gets very mad or very angry, and he gets angry often, okay? So imagine you want to go to a movie theater, and your friend's supposed to come with you, but, his girlfriend and him had a fight, Now he doesn't want to come. So maybe you're a little bit annoyed. You're not really happy about that. If this is something that happens often, okay, so it happens again and again and again, you would probably say this. You would say, oh, there we go again. Or oh, here we go again. And this means it's showing that something keeps happening, and it's making you kind of annoyed or angry because it happens a lot. Another example of this might be maybe you have a friend who drinks a lot. And maybe you get like a phone call and your friend says, I can't find my house. I don't know where I am. I'm lost in the city. Please help me. Come find me. If you get this call every Friday night, you're going to start getting like, oh, again. And so what you would say is, Chelsea's drunk again. Here we go again, or there we go again. Okay, so that's the meaning of it. It's when you're showing you're annoyed with something that happens a lot. On the positive side, so on the happy side of this, we also use there we go, or there you go, when we're showing encouragement for something. Okay, when we want to encourage somebody or, congratulate them for doing a good job on something. Okay, so for example, imagine, this is so far from the truth, but imagine I'm a hockey player and I'm really good at hockey and I love hockey, and I'm playing in a game and my team wins. We're so excited. We can say, there we go, we did it. Okay, meaning yes, we won the game. There we go. Okay, so we're encouraging and congratulating ourselves. Maybe if I'm not included, maybe if I'm talking to you and you just did really well on your English test, I'd say, there you go. Okay, and sometimes we also do this motion, there you go, to show our excitement that you did well. We can also say, way to go, okay, to show well done, way to go. So you might see a teacher write this on, a test if you did a good job. And so it means the same thing. It means, good job. I want to congratulate you for doing something well. All right, so now let's look at some more expressions of go. Okay, so I really like the next expression because it's very positive, very upbeat. It's a very good message, and that's go for it. So we use this a lot in conversation. All of these expressions are very conversational expressions we use. Go for it is what we tell somebody when they want to do something and they're not sure if they should or not. But it is a good idea. Maybe they're afraid to do something and you want to tell them, no, do it. You could say go for it. It kind of reminds me of a Nike commercial. You know how they say just do it? Go for it is kind of the same idea. So for example, maybe somebody says to you, you know what, I really want to get this job, but I don't think I'm a good candidate. I don't think I'm going to get the job. Maybe I don't have enough education, or, my English isn't good enough. Somebody might say to you, go for it, or go for it anyway. And it's, to tell you, despite all that, do it. Apply for that job. Maybe you're thinking about going to school, but you don't think, well, maybe I shouldn't do it, or I don't know. Go for it. Means, yeah, do it. Okay, so it's a way to encourage people to do something. And we often use it when somebody is having doubts. They're not sure because maybe they don't have confidence. So we often say, go for it to our friends, or, to tell them, yeah, you can do it. Another way we use this is when we're talking about food. If there's one piece of candy left, or one slice of cake left, or, one apple left, whatever you're eating, and there's only one left, and somebody wants to eat it, but they're worried maybe you want to eat it, you can tell them, yeah, you want it? Go for it. Means, yeah, you can eat it. So we also use it in that example as well. Okay, the next one I wanted to talk about, the next go expression, is go out of your way for someone or something. So when you go out of your way for someone or something, it means that you do something with more effort. Okay, so special effort. So it's something you don't usually do, but you do something that makes your life a little bit more difficult to help someone or to do something. So for example, maybe I'm going home and my mom calls me and says, "Can you pick me up some bread?" Now, even though I'm close to home, this is my home, this is, my car, and the bread's over here, I go out of my way to get the bread. So I do more work to accomplish some sort of goal. Sorry. Another example, I always go out of my way to help someone. Okay. So, even though there's an easy way to do something, I will do extra things to help somebody. Or maybe, some teachers go out of their way for students. Maybe their student is having a lot of trouble with, the present perfect or, some sort of grammar. And so even though the teacher finishes his or her work at maybe 4 p.m., they will stay for an extra hour to help the student. The teacher is going out of their way, meaning they're putting extra effort in, but it's something, they want to do. They want to help the student. So go out of your way means you make a special effort to help someone or to do something, okay? So we've looked at a lot of go expressions today. I recommend watching this video a couple of times because we have covered a lot. And usually your memory can only hold so many new pieces of vocabulary at a time. So it's actually good to maybe concentrate on maybe 3 expressions, get those down, get used to those expressions, and then watch it again, learn another 3 expressions we covered. That can be really, really helpful. You can also check out our website at www.engvid.com, and there you can do a quiz to practice a lot of what you learned today. I highly recommend that too, and I also recommend you take the quiz multiple times. Maybe you are really good at the quiz this week, but maybe next week you've forgotten some of the words. So it's good to do these quizzes multiple times to really help you remember the material. You can also subscribe to my channel. I have a lot of videos on all sorts of topics, including vocabulary, IELTS, pronunciation, grammar, just all sorts of different topics. So I highly recommend you check that out. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.